This case is about broken promises, secret plans, and a father's unyielding love. It's about a Marine reacting to a threat toward his beloved daughter. A horrific tragedy, but not a criminal offense. Dustin Duren is not guilty. Dustin, a Marine veteran, responded to a threat when he shot Caitlin one time. He saw his daughter being held hostage in front of him. He believed his daughter was in danger of being hurt, in danger of being a pawn in a custody dispute, in danger of being taken away from him, in danger of being kidnapped. The law allows for deadly force to be used against another in certain circumstances. The law says Dustin's actions were justified. He's not guilty of murder. He is not guilty of reckless conduct. He is not guilty of endangering the welfare of a child. You will hear that Caitlin agreed with a plan to let Dustin take their daughter Elowen to Berlin, New Hampshire from Minnesota, and that she would follow later with their younger daughter Valen. You will hear that she later changed her mind, but did not tell Dustin. Instead, she flew to Boston with their 1-year-old Valen, and then planned with her aunt to take Elowen and Valen from their father in the middle of the night while he was sleeping. To carry out the secret plan, Caitlin and Valen went to Berlin, stayed the night at Dustin's, and then ignored Dustin's requests for her to leave. Dustin decided he would need to bring Caitlin back to the seacoast where her aunt lived. And when he tried to get the kids ready to leave, Caitlin told Dustin no, she was not leaving. She demanded Dustin pay her more money. She threatened Dustin she was going to call the police and lie to them, accusing him of kidnapping Elowen. She told Dustin she was taking the kids back to Minnesota and he would never see them again. While making these threats, Caitlin remained seated on the couch, holding on to Elowen. She would not let go of Elowen when Dustin tried to free her. She gripped Elowen. She tugged Elowen. She bear-hugged Elowen. Elowen was being held hostage right in front of Dustin. Dustin did not want to hurt Elowen. She was crying. He was worried she was being hurt. On the third attempt to free Elowen from Caitlin's grip, Elowen let out a shriek. This was a startling and terrifying reaction that caused something in Dustin to tick. In his fear for Elowen and his need to protect her, he walked a couple feet over to his desk, got his gun, chambered around, pulled Elowen to safety, and fired one round into Caitlin's head. Dustin Duren defended his daughter. He is not guilty. You will hear that evidence through the state's case and through the defense's case. But now I want to talk to you about Dustin. Dustin is a father and he is a Marine. These two things shape his identity and his decision-making. Dustin enlisted with the Marines when he was 18 years old. He received extensive training in firearms. He was drilled with firearms, expected to be able to assemble, load, aim, and shoot a firearm quickly, automatically, without conscious thought. Use of a firearm became automatic and instinctual to him, something that he could do quickly, accurately, and without forethought. He was trained to use a firearm to respond to threats. You will hear that Dustin was the most proficient shooter in boot camp and the squadron high shooter during annual marksmanship training. He became a certified marksmanship coach and taught hundreds of Marines how to perfect their shooting. You will also hear that Dustin had been diagnosed with service-connected PTSD and has suffered bouts of depression in the past. Before meeting Caitlin in 2019, Dustin felt like his life was meaningless. He had no real purpose, no real reason to live. But shortly after beginning a relationship with Caitlin, she became pregnant with their first child. Dustin's mental health began to improve. He was beginning to believe he had a purpose, having a family. He and Caitlin lived together at his parents' home. Soon after Elwyn was born, they moved to Las Vegas and lived there together. Dustin was Elwyn's primary caretaker. He and Elwyn were bonded. At her very first Christmas, Caitlin flew home to Minnesota, leaving Dustin and their 1-year-old Elwyn behind. You will hear that Dustin's memory of that Christmas burns bright to this day. Dustin was feeling awful about the meager Christmas he could only provide for his daughter, but her pure joy that day shifted his whole mindset. He saw her big smile and her joy, and it was a pivotal moment in his life. He thought, this is my purpose, this is my life, Elwyn. From that moment, it was like a whole world had changed. Dustin's view on everything had changed. His entire life turned to Elwyn. The two were bonded. Eventually, Caitlin became pregnant with their second child, Valen. She was born in Las Vegas in January of 2023. By July of 2023, Dustin and Caitlin separated, and all four returned to Minnesota. Dustin moved back in with his parents. Caitlin moved in with a friend. For several months, they tried co-parenting. After a few months of this arrangement, Dustin and Caitlin came to a compromise in which they would both move to New Hampshire but live separately. They decided that Dustin would travel by car to New Hampshire first, taking Elwyn with him, and then Caitlin would fly out later with 1-year-old Valen and leave her with Dustin. Caitlin would then return to Minnesota for a few months to work and save some money, and then move to New Hampshire permanently in the early summer when she would have seasonal employment with her Aunt Brenda in Hampton. Dustin prepared for the trip to New Hampshire. He found an apartment in Berlin and showed Caitlin photos of the apartment. Caitlin gave Dustin a bunch of Elwyn and Valen's stuff to take with him. The day Dustin left, he picked Elwyn up from where Caitlin lived, at her friend's house, and Caitlin willingly handed over Elwyn. Caitlin did not call the police, she did not report a kidnapping, she agreed to this plan. On their trip east, Dustin called and texted Caitlin several times with updates. He sent pictures of Elwyn. After Dustin got to New Hampshire, he and Caitlin had several arguments over the phone about money. Caitlin wanted to claim both girls on their taxes and wanted Dustin to send her money. Caitlin threatened to call the police and falsely claim that Dustin had kidnapped Elwyn and had taken her to New Hampshire without Caitlin's permission. Dustin was worried that Caitlin wouldn't bring Valen and that the girls would be separated. You will hear that when Caitlin made this threat a few weeks before this incident, Dustin was alarmed. He called Caitlin's mother. He called Caitlin's father. He called the Berlin Police Department. He offered to let Caitlin claim both girls on their taxes, paid for her plane ticket to New Hampshire, and sent her some money. 2 weeks later, Caitlin and Valen did fly to Boston, as planned, on the 27th of February. Dustin knew when they would arrive in Boston, but no other details, because Caitlin did not share those. He did not know how Caitlin and Valen were getting to Berlin or when. He did not know if Caitlin planned on staying in Berlin or where she would stay. He assumed she wanted to stay a couple days in Berlin to visit with Elwyn and offered for her to stay with him and the girls, but Caitlin declined this invitation. Caitlin had other plans, secret plans she did not share with Dustin. You will hear about the plan that Caitlin created with her Aunt Brenda. Brenda will tell you that she lives in Hampton. She spoke to Caitlin about her visit to New Hampshire. She will tell you that Caitlin and Valen flew into Boston and shuttled to Seabrook, where Brenda and her friend picked them up. Brenda will tell you that Caitlin and Valen spent the night in Hampton, and while there, Brenda and Caitlin came up with a plan to take the kids from Dustin.
Objection. Reproach.
Yep.
While Caitlin was visiting with her Aunt Brenda the night before she met Dustin, Brenda and Caitlin came up with a plan to take the kids from Dustin. Brenda will tell you that she agreed to bring Caitlin and Valen to meet up with Dustin and Elowen, drop them off, and wait a day or two for Caitlin to call her for a ride back with both of the girls. Caitlin would sneak the two kids out while Dustin was sleeping, and Brenda would pick them up and take Caitlin and her kids to the airport to fly back to Minnesota. Caitlin already had a return ticket to Minnesota, and Brenda was going to buy a ticket for Elowen. And Valen was young enough that she could sit on her mom's lap. You will hear that when Caitlin texted Dustin that Brenda was driving her up, Dustin suggested they meet up at a spot halfway between Hampton and Berlin. And he found a restaurant in Ossipee. Dustin believed that Caitlin and Brenda would have a meal with him and the girls, and then Caitlin and Brenda would return to Hampton, while Dustin and the girls would head north to Berlin. The next day, Dustin and Elowen drove to Ossipee and got to the restaurant first, where they waited inside the restaurant, waiting for Caitlin and Valen. When Caitlin arrived, she called Dustin, asking him to come outside and help with Valen's things. Dustin and Elowen went outside to meet Caitlin and Valen. Brenda was already gone. They put Valen's stuff in the car, and the four of them, Elowen, Valen, Dustin, and Caitlin, went into the restaurant to eat. Dustin and Caitlin did not have any real conversation. Dustin visited with Valen, Caitlin with Elowen. Caitlin started asking Elowen if she could come see Elowen's new house. Dustin was confused, since Caitlin had said she did not want to stay with them. Caitlin did not speak directly with Dustin, instead saying things to Elowen for Dustin to overhear. Dustin agreed that Caitlin could spend a night, and so after dinner, all four of them got into Dustin's car, drove back to Berlin. Caitlin sat in the back seat with the girls. That night, Dustin slept in his bed with Valen, and Caitlin and Elowen slept on an air mattress between the bedroom and the living room. The next day, they all went to the Berlin Library for children's story time and arts and crafts. They came home and had lunch. Caitlin spent the afternoon playing with the girls and not speaking to Dustin. Dustin tried to ask Caitlin what her plan was when she was leaving, but Caitlin would not answer him. Dustin continued to ask, and Caitlin continued to ignore her all afternoon. Caitlin played with Elowen and Valen in Elowen's bedroom, and every so often, Dustin would go to the doorway of the room and ask Caitlin when and how she was leaving. Caitlin did not respond. At one point, she picked up her phone and started using it. Dustin didn't know if Caitlin was messaging someone. Her silence was telling. Dustin was suspicious. Caitlin's behavior concerned him. Something was off. Eventually, once it started to get dark, Dustin told Caitlin that since she wasn't responding, he was going to drive her all the way back to Hampton, and he told Caitlin it was time to leave. Dustin was stressed because it was a long drive, and by the time he dropped Caitlin off in Hampton and then drove all the way back to Berlin with the girls would have been up all night. Caitlin sat down on the couch. Dustin put Valen in a car seat and sat on the hallway floor. He went back into the living room and saw Caitlin go over and pick up Elowen, return to the couch, and set Elowen on her lap. Elowen straddled Caitlin's knee. Dustin told Caitlin, "Come on, we're leaving," and tried to take Elowen to get her ready to go. Caitlin tugged Elowen tightly and pulled her back, wrapping her arms around Dustin's daughter in a bear hug. Dustin let go and asked Caitlin to let go of Elowen, and Caitlin said no. Dustin kept asking Caitlin to let go of Elowen and get ready to leave. Caitlin started demanding Dustin pay child support, give her $2,000 per month. Caitlin told Dustin she was going to take Elowen and Valen back to Minnesota and Dustin would never see them again. Caitlin again threatened Dustin that she would call the cops and tell them Dustin had taken Elowen without permission. Caitlin was still holding on to Elowen, her arms wrapped tightly around Elowen, restraining her. Caitlin told Dustin again that he would never see his kids. Dustin felt like Caitlin was holding Elowen hostage. He was seeing his daughter held hostage in front of his eyes. He kept begging Caitlin to let go of Elowen and to just get ready to leave. Caitlin refused and kept saying she was taking the kids and he would never see them again. At this point, Valen was crying. Elowen was upset and crying. The situation was overwhelming. Dustin tried again to free Elowen, but Caitlin yanked her away again. Dustin didn't want to force anything, so he just let Elowen go. He tried again to persuade Caitlin to let go of Elowen, and she refused. She continued to threaten Dustin. Dustin didn't know who Caitlin had been messaging on her phone, whether there was someone outside waiting. He was suspicious. He was concerned. He was fearful. Dustin could see his gun on the desk in the living room in close proximity to Caitlin. Dustin knew that Caitlin knew how to use the gun. He himself taught her how to handle and shoot a gun. He couldn't take his eyes off Caitlin and Elowen while Caitlin was holding Elowen hostage right next to a firearm. Dustin tried one more time to take Elowen. He tried to hold one of Caitlin's wrists while wrapping his arm behind Elowen so that he could free Elowen from Caitlin's bear hug. Caitlin did not let go and instead got more aggressive. She braced her foot against the living room table and pulled back hard. Elowen screamed, a piercing cry like she was in pain. Immediately, everything felt extremely dire to Dustin, like Elowen was in immediate danger. Hearing Elowen scream was like a tick. The only thing he was thinking was that he had to save Elowen. In an autonomous motion, like he had been trained by the military, he grabbed his gun. He had no thoughts in his head other than he needed to save Elowen. He acted instinctually, automatically, and reflexively. In less than 3 seconds, he grabbed the gun, pulled Elowen out of the way, and eliminated the threat, shooting Caitlin in the head. Elowen was safe in Dustin's arms. He is a Marine. He acts like a Marine. He did what a Marine is trained to do. Dustin saved Elowen. Dustin took the girls and left the apartment in his Subaru. He needed to make sure the girls were okay and to get out of that apartment. He didn't want Elowen to see anything. After driving south for about 2 hours, he stopped for gas in Concord. He called his mom and told her he shot Caitlin. He asked for his dad to call the police. He also sent them a video of the girls in the car at that moment to show them the girls were safe. He said he was going to spend a few more hours with the girls before he turned himself in. And that's what he did. He spent a few more hours driving with, talking with the girls, making sure they were okay, making sure they knew he loved them, before turning around and driving back to New Hampshire. He planned to get breakfast with the girls before he turned himself in, but the police located him before he was able to do so. And you will see Dustin's arrest on video. You will see how he complied with the police commands, how he warned the police there were kids in the car, how he warned them there was a gun in the driver's side door, and he then gave a lengthy interview to the police. The state will probably show you Dustin's interview and what he told them after his arrest. This is a case about broken promises, secret plans, and a father's unyielding love. It's about a Marine reacting to a threat toward his beloved daughter, a horrific tragedy, but not a criminal offense. Dustin is not guilty. At the end of the evidence, the judge will instruct you on the law, and he may explain to you that what the law allows when defending others. He may instruct you that a person is justified in using deadly force against another when he reasonably believes that such person is committing or about to commit a kidnapping, is likely to use any unlawful force against a person present while committing or attempting to commit a burglary, or is likely to use any unlawful force in the commission of a felony against the actor within his own dwelling or home. When he shot Caitlin, Dustin reasonably believed that Caitlin was about to kidnap Elowen and that Caitlin was using unlawful force to commit a crime. She was holding Elowen hostage in front of him, threatening that she would take his kids to Minnesota and he would never see them again. Caitlin would rather hurt Elowen than let her go. And when Caitlin hurt Elowen, Dustin acted to save her. Dustin's entire life purpose was to be a good father for Elowen and Balin, and he did what he believed was necessary to protect Elowen. The judge may instruct you. You cannot convict Dustin unless the state proves to you not only that Dustin killed Caitlin, but that he did so without justification. You must find Dustin not guilty unless you are convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that Dustin did not act to defend his daughter and prevent a kidnapping. The state will not meet its burden. Dustin was justified under the law. He acted to protect his daughter. After hearing all the evidence, we are confident you will find him not guilty.